to call me up and ask one of his closest friends who knows all about him to talk in front of his church on such a special day. I have to say that's a man of faith right there. I heard, I think Brother Boyd earlier said that there's, Jason was apprehensive about today. I'll tell you, I'm more apprehensive about speaking in front of everybody probably than he is. So we'll, in Proverbs 17:17 it says, "A friend loveth at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." Jason and I have been friends for over 20 years. It's weird to even say 20 years of friendship, but to be friends, I would hope that everybody would have such a friend as I've had with Jason over the years. If you have that in your life, then you have a special thing. We've known each other since we were 10. With Jason, I've shared middle school classes and high school classes and little league teams and pony league teams and everything in between. And we worked together. We were neighbors. We were in each other's weddings. It's pretty safe to say we know each other very well. Practically every memory I have, both good and bad, I have to say, Jason's in it. And we. At one point in our life, we even talked to high school counselor into giving us all the same classes. And so we went together everywhere during school, and people were like, "You guys ever leave each other? You guys are always with each other all the time." So it was a memorable time in our life growing up. I know Jason likes to give me credit for being a good Christian friend to him growing up. But the reality is I was a terrible Christian friend to him growing up. I gave him a bad example of what a Christian should be. There was not much difference than me, than the world. As a Christian kid we did, I can look back and say that there was no difference. And but there was, the reality was my dad was a great example to him. And my dad, took a great responsibility and care for my friends. He wanted to reach out to them. He wanted them to be saved. And even when I wanted them to be saved, I didn't have the courage to live like that. He still was there. So when we were about 16, my dad would hold a Bible study in a friend's house, and he would encourage me to invite my friends. So I remember I invited Jason and Josh, and they came with me, and my dad, I remember the message. My dad was speaking about Genesis, and he was talking about, original sin and going over the fall of man. And Jason says, "David, I don't even understand what you're talking about." And he says, "Well, and he starts trying to explain to him. He goes, "No, it's not that. I don't even understand these people. Who are these people? I don't know who Adam and Eve even are." And, it was shocking to me. I grew up in Sunday school, grew up in church. Even though I wasn't some Bible scholar, I knew who Adam and Eve were, and Jason didn't, and I knew that upset my dad. He just, it kind of, anguished his soul a little bit. But he reached out to Jason that night, and I know he led Jason to the Lord that night, if I'm not mistaken. And like most 16-year-olds and 15-year-olds, it wasn't an instant, "Oh yes, now I'm going to grab my Bible and read every night." Jason, got saved, made a profession, but continued to live life as he saw fit and as I saw fit. And we would just go and do whatever came to our minds. And, after high school, we were really close in high school. After high school, we remained close. But there was a period of time where he went kind of a different direction, and it was a little further than I was willing to go, even as a backslidden Christian. And, I think I'll let Jason at some point give his own bio, but that was, I know that there was times where he definitely escaped the valley of the shadow of death. And, I think he's probably said that before, but it wouldn't have taken much for this tent revival to not be here tonight, this church that he's been a part of to not be here, for Jason to not be here, period. And, but God in his own will plucked Jason out for his purposes, and preserved his life definitely during those times. I know one of the turning points for him was when he left the company he was at and came to work with my dad and me in the real estate business. And he, I remember when he came in, he wasn't looking the real estate part. And my dad was, he had to do the same thing for me. He always said he had to clean up his monkey. That's what he said about me. He said he had to clean up his monkey's friend. And so he had to, clean up he said, Jason, you gotta lose the bleach blonde hair and and the necklace and all the things. You gotta dress a little more professional. But, Jason respected my dad, and he looked to him, and we had company Bible studies, and my dad put the Lord first in his life, and I watched as seeds were being planted in Jason's life, and I watched his life be transformed from the inside out. And that's the way you want it to be, not from the outside in, right?
Right.
And, it's not one of those overnight experiences. It's not one of those things where he had an emotional feeling and then, it petered out a few years later. It was, it took long for those roots to go deep, for that seed to be planted. And that's why I think as Christians, we shouldn't put unrealistic expectations on people. Because everybody's got a different path, and God will lead them in their own time, and it's the Holy Spirit's responsibility to do that, and to grow them. And I watched Jason, and it was a process. But it was a process where that seed had to go deep, and those roots had to go even deeper. And I watched him, and I watched him study with my dad. My dad was patient. My dad was patient with him and took time with him. And it got to the point where he was even sneaking out over to my dad's house and hanging out with my dad behind my back. I remember telling him, I said, hey, get your own dad. I got to hang out with my dad too, He's stealing all this time with him. And so, but, obviously joking, we were joking. But, I knew there was something more happening, and he was being trained up. And I remember the day when he told me that he was called to preach. And it is definitely an interesting experience. Because, Jason wasn't a kid that anyone thought would be a preacher. He wasn't a kid that anyone thought would be a pastor. When Brother Boyd said that they wanted to lay hands on him tonight, I'm sure there was a lot of people over there that wanted to lay hands on him. But it's a different type now, but God used the adversity, the things that he went through in his life to shape him, to make him compassionate for people that don't come from the same backgrounds that everybody comes from. He grew up just around the corner from these apartments, and we spent a lot of time riding bikes around these neighborhoods and doing things, God just pulled him out. He plucked him out for a purpose, and it was to come back here, and he planted him back in the same community. And I'll tell you this: when someone gets called to preach, and really, really well, it's definitely an interesting thing, because you feel like you almost know too much, and you know too much about them, and the reality is Jesus' own brothers felt the same way. And they never saw him do anything wrong, and they still struggled with the idea that their brother was the Messiah.
Right.
They doubted, they had questions, and I think as a friend who knows all about it, about you and about as a brother would know, you definitely have. It's definitely a challenge. You definitely wonder, is this the right thing? I hope he's doing. I hope he's not gonna fail. I hope, but the reality is, if I didn't belong to such a great church, I would follow behind Jason. I would be in this church and I would follow behind him. And it's hard for your pride to say that when you've been best friends with somebody for so long, but I have no doubt that I would have no trouble following behind him, because I know that he's a man of his word. I know that he's transparent, and I know he's a man without guile. And there's no me in it for Jason. He left a business that was perfectly fine, and wealth that he could do what he wanted, and left it behind to live with really less than most. And I'm thankful to have such a good friend. I know my dad is reaping a lot of rewards in heaven, Jason. Yes. Because Jason's faithful, and he would be proud of you today. I'm proud of you too, brother.
Could you imagine being a teacher that had both of those guys in the same class every day? Okay, you passed. Just get out of here.